Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cancer Support Community Central Ohio's Natural Living Workshop with Community Herbalist Lily Kunning. I'm Darlene. I'm the program manager here, and we are just thrilled that Lily is going to be presenting Gut Health is Whole Body Health today. So let me share my screen here, Lily, and we'll get going.
All right. Okay, so we can just move from the title page. That's fine. All right, so when I start teaching my herb students, because I teach people how to be herbalists, the first anatomy and physiology unit that I teach is the digestive system. It's the first thing that gets created when organisms, animal organisms are being created. If you look at, cell division and how, organisms become more complex, the first thing that's created is the alimentary canal, and then everything kind of comes from that. And it is innervated, so the nervous system is in there. 75 to 90% of your immune system is centered in the gut. There is a connection between your gut and your brain, and we know that if your microbiome is off, it can cause depression. And yet Americans have all kinds of issues with the digestive system. They are 43% of Americans diet and assume weight loss is some sort of health goal. 50% of all American women do. Many try fad diets that don't work, are unhealthy, and cause more damage than good because of the yo-yo effect. So today we're going to talk about some common gut issues, diet, nutrition, your microbiome, and some solid nutrition and supplement facts that we can use to think about supplementation if you need it. So there are some obvious problems that maybe all of us have encountered throughout our lives. Gas and bloating in the digestive tract can be painful. Acid reflux can lead to GERD, but most people have had heartburn at least once in their life. Many people that I talk to in my clinical practice have had their gallbladder removed because they've had what medical terminology is gallbladder attacks. With stones or with spasms. Diarrhea and constipation comes with, parasites, but also comes from, poor nutrition and, other issues. And bad breath, like people don't realize that bad breath could either be something going on in your mouth, like gingivitis and periodontal disease, which is a problem and you should get that fixed. Bless you. If you could mic yourself just a little bit, and then we can, yeah, bless you though, whoever you are. And then bad breath can also mean gut issues. So there's two reasons for bad breath. One is within the mouth, and that can be gum disease, and you want to get that checked out. But it could also be very poor digestion that is coming up all the way from your stomach and causing bad breath, and having rotten food rotting down there rather than being processed shows some pretty profound digestive issues. And so if you do have a problem with chronic bad breath, first I would go to the dentist. And if that's not the cause, if it's not your gums, then we need to work on your digestion. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, so Americans spend $10 billion a year on digestive supplements, and the most commonly prescribed drug in the United States is proton pump inhibitors. Now, you probably recognize some of these brand names: Prilosec, Zantac, Prevacid. You're supposed to take one every day in order to avoid acid reflux and hopefully GERD. But these drugs were never approved for long-term use. And I have seen clients that have been on them for years. They start taking it and they're never told not to stop taking it. And they have some serious profound effects for the digestive tract and particularly the liver. If you are on one of these drugs, and you have been for a while, I would encourage you to get off of it. And one of the handouts that I'm sending is how to get off PPIs using herbal supplements and why PPIs are so problematic. Next slide. Another problem that we've discovered, and it's been loosely termed leaky gut, it means that there are micro tears in your bowels. And so food that should be contained within the alimentary canal is leaking out into the body cavity, and it can cause some problems. Obviously, you want to have everything contained into a closed system, but it can affect multiple body systems, cascading problems. And so leaky gut is something that we would want to heal if you do have micro tears. And we'll be talking about some food remedies that you can do for leaky gut to help heal that area. Next, GERD. GERD is problematic because it's acid reflux gone haywire, and with acid constantly coming up into the throat, it can actually lead to the development of cancer. So we definitely want to stop GERD, right? It's not a minor thing, but it's something that, long-term PPIs are not necessarily the solution. It's just going to cause different problems. It is prevalent, GERD, but if you look, you'll see that North America is more prevalent than, say, East Asia. So like up to 26%, and these are 2001 numbers, so I am sure it's higher by now, compared to maybe 7% in East Asia. And what that indicates to me is dietary issues. Frankly, a lot of the health problems that Americans are seen for are a direct cause of years of improper nutrition and eating highly processed food. And so we'll talk about what makes a good diet a little bit later, so that if you have some tweaks that you can make, you can. But 22% of primary care physician visits were related in some way to GERD. That is significant, a quarter, like almost 1 in 4 people going to the doctor because they're having GERD symptoms. And so we want to help you get rid of your acid reflux so that it doesn't become more serious. But acid reflux is a symptom. It is not a diagnosis. I know that in Western medicine, they have a diagnosis-based system where they're like, oh, you have acid reflux, therefore this is the pill for you, meaning a PPI. Herbalism and other holistic systems of medicine, like I'm trained in Western herbalism, which has its roots in Europe and then absorbed a lot of the materia medica from this continent as well. But there's also Chinese herbalists and Indian herbalists who practice Ayurveda. Those are all holistic systems where they see the body sort of unified and not just specialized systems, and we see the human in their larger environment. And so we look at a holistic style system, and acid reflux is a symptom of a problem. And so in holistic systems, rather than just doing a diagnosis pill straight line trajectory, what we do is we're like, okay, so why are you having acid reflux? What is going on that is causing your body to create too much acid and have it come up further than it should out of the digestive tract? And so they're very different approaches to the body and to medical issues. Next slide. So here are some more concerning issues. So we're kind of just going through some of the issues that can come up with the digestive tract, things that can go wrong, imbalances. Both Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are autoimmune disorders, where in the autoimmune disorder, the body is attacking parts of the digestive tract. In ulcerative colitis, it's the colon. In Crohn's disease, it's the stomach. But as a holistic practitioner, all autoimmune disease is autoimmune disease, regardless of what part of the body the immune system is attacking. So Crohn's disease is often treated similarly to lupus, other than symptom management, right? Lupus is another autoimmune disease, or MS, right? So with autoimmune disease, the root cause is an endocrine immune imbalance that causes the body to turn on itself. So we work on that. And then we also work on symptom management, because obviously a Crohn's flare is very painful. I've had clients that are bleeding for days because of a Crohn's flare up if they've gotten glutened. You know, we need to deal with symptom management, which is important, but it's not the be all and end all, and then get to the root cause and try and restore balance and homeostasis to a body that is freaking out over stuff and is so freaked out that it's attacking itself, right? So, you know, autoimmune disease and inflammatory bowel disease in particular affect millions of Americans. These stats are from earlier, and I'm sure it's higher now, because who hasn't heard of Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis at this point? Everybody seems to know someone. And many people are diagnosed before the age of 35. And that sort of threshold is interesting to me, because you get, you know, about half of your lifetime of eating and being exposed to things in the air, things in the water, things in the soil. And that's where most of the freakouts start to happen after 3 decades of exposure. And what I'm not trying to imply anything, I'm going to directly tell you, I believe that autoimmune disease and cancer have huge causal relationships to toxins that we have surrounded ourselves with in our food, in our body care, in our cleaning products, in the soil, because of, you know, big agriculture. All of these chemicals have been compounded. And, you know, when you look at, let's say, breast cancer tumors that are removed, 90-something% of them contain parabens in the tumor itself. Parabens are used often in body care and healthcare, or not healthcare, cleaning solutions. And so we're exposing ourselves to these chemicals, and then our body is freaking out. So these chronic conditions can be treated, but not cured. What that means to me as a holistic practitioner is you can get to a healthy homeostasis, but you forever have to be vigilant about what you let into your immediate environment and how you care for yourself. I got injured on the job, you know, a musculoskeletal injury that causes partial disability for me back in 2001. And I am fully functional now. I can use a keyboard again. I can, you know, shovel gravel onto a driveway. I can do all kinds of stuff. But I also have limits, and my limits are more intense than they were before my injury. And that's the same way with any sort of autoimmune disease. Your body now has this pattern that you need to make sure that it doesn't go back into. Next. Okay, here's another common problem: gallstones or bladder attacks. I really wish that every client that I have seen that has had a gallbladder removal had come to see me years earlier, because we might have been able to avoid that issue. The gallbladder is simply an empty organ whose job it is to release bile into the digestive tract so that your body can break down fats. The bile is produced by the liver, it goes into the gallbladder, and it's strategically released by the gallbladder. There is no reason that we should see all of the problems that we do in the United States with gallbladder disease. 25 million people in 2001 have had gallstones or gallbladder disease, and there are new cases all the time. And as a holistic practitioner, when people are starting to have gallbladder attacks, you know, I have a protocol that I use to kind of restore liver and gallbladder functioning to normalcy so that it doesn't cascade. The problem is, of course, if there's a problem and it just continues and perpetuates, it becomes such a problem that modern medicine's only option is to remove it, right? And surgery, to me, should always be a last resort, right? Removing a part of your body is a pretty extreme therapy. And so there are other things to try before that, but they're not necessarily, other than a specialized diet. You know, Western modern medicine doesn't have a lot of solutions. So I often wish that I had seen my clients before, but when I do see a client that has had a gallbladder removal, there are certain things that you need to do, whether we're treating digestive issues or not, because there's no gallbladder, just like when there's no appendix. Appendixes are useful. Don't let anyone tell you that they don't have a purpose. They do. Next slide. Oh, yeah, this is just to gross you out. I'm sorry. These are gallbladder stones. You can go to the next slide. Yuck. All right. So what's not a problem? So I went through a bunch of problems that, you know, are healthcare issues for people with the digestive tract. But what's not a problem that, you know, modern medicine has talked about as a problem? BMI, body mass index. It is a 19th century idea that has never been improved upon. And all it is a simple division problem. And it does not take into account your genetic history, your ethnicity, or actual measures of health. What's your blood pressure, right? What's your cholesterol? BMI is not a clear indicator of health. So if you have more body mass than the chart says you should, that doesn't mean you're inherently unhealthy. Just like if you are a skinny person, that doesn't mean that you're inherently healthier than a fat person. Obesity is the term that defines BMI as 30 or higher. And frankly, there are all kinds of humans on this planet. Some of them as a people have a BMI of 30 or higher, and they're very healthy. They eat very well, they move around. Like, it's not that they're an unhealthy people. Obesity and BMI are not actual health problems. And I know that is probably shocking to some of you on this presentation, because we're constantly bombarded with the idea that fat is unhealthy, but you can be healthy at every size. And one of the handouts that I am sending home with you today is the Health at Every Size Manifesto. There is a book called Health at Every Size by Dr. Linda Bacon. And that whole book is a study of the studies. And she looks at all of the scientific studies, scans them all, summarizes them for you, and shows to you that being fat is not a health issue. Being fat is just looking a different way and maybe having problems finding clothes that fit. But that's a social stigma. That is, you know, not a health issue. So wanted to put that out there. The weight loss industry, and don't, you know, definitely think about it. It is an industry. $66 billion last year is made, and they're poised to make even more. And it's based on body shame, right? They want you to feel like your body is something that needs to be improved, right? And they have the solution for you. You know, they publish books and diet foods and diet plans, and, you know, you're supposed to go to these meetings, and, you know, they have appendage industries like fashion and magazines and clothing, like all trying to get you to spend money to hate your body. We're so inundated by people urging us to correct what society deems as flaws that it takes away from all kinds of other wonderful things we could be doing with our money and our time. It is not a problem, your body. And it's led to a lot of fad diets. So I'm just going to go over a couple of them just so you know. Keto is a fad diet on the internet now. It got its start from neurologists and neurosurgeons who were trying to stop seizure disorders. Keto is a high fat and protein diet with very little carbohydrates. And it's highly restrictive, and it's never meant for long term, even for the people with seizure disorders. They go on it for a few weeks, they go off it for a little bit, because frankly, it is not nutritionally sustainable. You can't sustain your body long term on keto. It can cause some serious problems. And while in the beginning you may indeed lose weight, again, weight loss is not a health goal. You know, so keto, please, if you're looking at ways to correct your body, lose some weight, keto is definitely not the way to go. Your body needs complex carbohydrates. Avoiding all carbs is an issue. You know, keto is named after ketosis, which is a health crisis for your body. It's putting you into keto, like a mild form of ketoacidosis, which I'll tell you, ketoacidosis is a problem. My partner, who is a diabetic, went into ketoacidosis and had to be hospitalized fasting over a weekend until he could be released and put on insulin. Now, who would want to do that to their body voluntarily, right? You know, initially the weight loss that comes from keto is from a loss of water, which can happen on any diet, frankly. You cut down on the carbs in your diet and your body starts to use up the carbohydrates that it's stored in the liver. You know, and then you have other weight loss, you know, as a result. And again, your body needs complex carbohydrates to give you energy to fuel your day. If you continue with a keto diet, you're going to have what's called the keto flu. It feels like influenza, where your body is achy and tired and you have brain fog. It could lead to kidney stones if you do it long enough, and vitamin and mineral deficiencies. It can also cause bowel issues because you're not getting enough fiber from those complex carbohydrates. The vegan diet, you know, it's interesting. So there are diets that are aimed at you for health reasons and for weight loss reasons. The vegan diet also piles on a morality reason. And I'm not going to get into whether I think it's moral or immoral to eat meat, because that is a personal choice. But what I will tell you about the diet itself. So a vegan diet, for those that don't know, is a diet that doesn't include any animal-based food. So that includes meat, but also dairy, eggs, and sometimes vegans don't eat honey as well. And it purports to be healthier. Meat and dairy are claimed to be unhealthy and unnecessary to, you know, survive, and more moral, right? Because there's no animal killing, there's no factory farms. You know, a lot of big ag factory farms that deal with livestock definitely contribute to climate change. I will not argue that. Of course they do. Any big factory style anything is going to contribute to climate change. Let's go on to the next slide. So problems with the vegan diet, and I'm going to get into the health reasons. You will have missing nutrients after a while. You will have not enough vitamin B12, vitamin D, enough essential fatty acids, heme iron, which can only be found in animal products. There are vegetable sources of iron, but heme iron can only come from, well, animals. Heme comes from, you know, hematic, like blood. Calcium deficiencies and zinc deficiencies. And B12 and heme iron are really only available in animal products. And so you're going to have a cascade of that. The B12 is definitely the contributor to feeling like you have brain fog, because it's you know, it gives you a lot of energy. So PLOS One is a scientific journal. It's an open source scientific journal. And according to PLOS One, vegetarians have higher incidences of cancer, allergies, mental health disorders than their carnivorous counterparts. And they don't say why, they just did a survey. I think it's because vegetarians, and I have been a vegetarian and I have been a vegan, often rely on more convenience foods, because just because you have, you know, a vegetarian diet doesn't mean that you've left the culture that we live in. We live in a capitalist culture that makes us work all the dang time. You know, we have to figure out when we're going to take our bathroom break, and we're scheduled for lunch, and it's usually only a half an hour, and we don't have time to cook our meals anymore. Like, we're running. And so of course, Americans eat a lot more convenience foods than other cultures, right? And those convenience foods have a price. The other thing about a vegan diet is that it's not sustainable. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how livestock agribusiness contributes to climate change, and that is true. But without fossil fuels bringing food from all over the globe, quinoa, jackfruit, things like that, that vegans eat quite a lot of, and creating synthetic vitamins, we could not have veganism. Veganism is this wonderful idea that just slightly missed the mark, in my opinion. It relies on monoculture farming of soy, for example, which is also harmful to the environment. So for me, a diet that is sustainable gives you all the nutrients that you need from your food. You don't need to supplement. And that is hard to do in America. I understand that. What's our next one? Is it, oh yeah, pH diets, paleo, and fasting. I'm just sort of throwing a bunch more at you. So they're quackery. pH diets, first of all, like, no, that's not the way that your body works. Paleo is not the ancestral way that we ate. Many scientists have debunked that. And fasting, you know, fasting can be recommended for specific health purposes by a professional, but you should only do them when everybody knows what you're doing and you have a support network in place, and it shouldn't be a long-term thing. There's a very big trend right now, what they call intermittent fasting, where they fast all day and then they eat one meal and they just keep doing that habit. Your body is being freaked out by starvation and then feast, and then starvation and then feast. And it's no better than yo-yo dieting. It's actually harder on your systems than having small intermittent meals throughout the day. So yeah, we'll go on to the next one. So what is healthy? We talked a lot about what is it. Let's talk about what is. So this is the Mediterranean diet pyramid. If you look, let me see here. The bottom is basically whole grain. So not white rice, brown rice, right? Whole grain bread, things like that. Above that is fruit, which is a smaller portion than vegetables, right? Above that is dairy products. In the Mediterranean diet, they eat a lot of yogurt, they eat a lot of cheese. Above that is fish. So if you look, there's a line in the center of the pyramid, and below that line is daily. Above that line is weekly. So far we haven't gotten into any flesh until we hit the weekly mark. And so fish, more than poultry, you know, and then we've got olives, right? They eat a lot of olives, potatoes, eggs, and sweets. And then monthly, 4 servings of red meat a month, right? Now, if you think about that in comparison to your diet, where are the differences? The Mediterranean diet is considered one of the most healthy in the world. I also have comparisons to the Japanese diet, and indigenous Australian diet, and they're very similar in this. They just have different cultural things, like olives are not on the Japanese diet, for example, but fermented foods are. So these guides, I would urge you to look at cultures that have longevity and less health problems than the United States. Look at their diet. And Mediterranean, it's been published a bunch of times. There are lots of books on it. Think about how you could transform what you're doing every week with your current diet to something like this. Yeah, next slide. Let's talk about your microbiome. So most people now know that we are not just an individual, we are actually a colony. And we have beneficial bacteria and yeast all throughout our digestive tract, and they actually help us to digest things. When it is thrown off, we not only have digestive problems, but we have mental problems. We can end up having skin problems. And the bacteria aren't just in our digestive tract. We have colonies on our skin, you know, all over our body. And when they get depleted, and they get depleted by numerous ways, we get imbalanced. It can cause very simple problems like gas and bloating that can be corrected fairly easily. But if it goes for a long time where we don't have enough colonies, it can actually cause a cascade of health problems, both mental and emotional. let's go on to the
Lily,
next.
we have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Mediterranean diet is not gluten-free, right? So what diet is good for gluten-free? Thanks.
Sure. So if you have Crohn's disease and you need to avoid gluten, and so I make the distinction, people who actually have a disease or an allergy to gluten versus someone who thinks they're sensitive, because most people in the United States who think they're sensitive to gluten are actually sensitive to glyphosate, which is an herbicide that they spray on wheat, unless it's certified organic, before processing, because it makes it easier on the combines. It is a carcinogen. It is a it's a carcinogen, it's an endocrine disruptor, and it causes serious health problems. In other countries, I've known people with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis to go to places in the EU and eat baguettes, eat pasta, and not have a problem. We cause a lot of health problems as human beings to ourselves. Now, if you are truly allergic and have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, if you're looking to replace that bottom part of the Mediterranean pyramid, there are definitely other grains that you can substitute for the whole grain rice, which tends to be their main grain. I would encourage you to look at gluten-free grains, and there's a lot on the market now. Bob's Red Mill is a brand that has really great gluten-free grains that you can buy, and you can substitute those. Obviously wheat and barley and things like that, not so much, but there are other grains that you can use. So you can also get, certified gluten-free grains. You have to pay a little extra for them, like rice that has not been processed in a facility with other grains. Corn is another one that you can combine as long as it's been processed correctly. But you can swap out what they use in their diet for whole grains with some gluten-free ones.
Talia, did you have a question?
I did. So glyphosate, it's found in gluten. Yeah.
No, glyphosate is, sorry, I'm speaking fast, but glyphosate, the brand name is Roundup. It was originally made by Monsanto, which was bought by Bayer recently. It is a herbicide. And in virtually all commercially grown wheat that isn't certified organic, they spray glyphosate on the crops about 3 days before harvest so that it just falls right over when the combine comes by and doesn't cause mechanical problems. But it does cause health problems, right? We don't really regulate those chemicals the way that we should in the United States. They're banned elsewhere. Like you can't find glyphosate in the EU for either personal use, spraying the cracks on the sidewalk for weeds, or in agriculture. And yet in the United States, they are allowed. And unfortunately, a lot of the highly processed foods like breakfast cereals and bread that you get made for you, when they did a broad survey of them and sampled, even some brands that were labeled as organic, which shouldn't have it, there's drift, right? You spray something and it drifts in the wind over to the adjoining fields. I believe it was 85% of surveyed oats, wheat, and was it oats, wheat, and corn contained glyphosate. And it does a number on your gut. It's killing your microbiome. It's causing autoimmune disease. It's causing cancer. It's an endocrine disruptor, so it's also causing fertility problems and birth defects.
So really just organic flour would work.
Yes, you want to get certified organic. I would go for one of the more stringent organic certifications. So like Oregon Tilth over USDA organic, because companies are constantly lobbying the USDA to lower their standards of what organic means, because organic is a legal term. It has a definition, and they're trying to get it so that they can constantly use chemicals that make big ag's job easier. But it definitely has health problems. So I would go for something like, CCOF, which is California's organic certification, Oregon Tilth, which is Oregon's certification. Ohio has OFA, and that, you can look for a farm that is OFA certified, and they are more stringent than the USDA.
Are you talking OFFEA?
OEFFA, OFA. I know it's Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association.
Yeah, I've heard of it before. They had they have conferences and stuff. Yeah,
they do. Yeah, every President's Day weekend they have an annual conference, and their headquarters are in Columbus, so you could definitely check them out. They've got all kinds of programs for both farmers, food manufacturers, and consumers. So, all right, moving on. So, eating a diet high in fiber helps prevent health problems like diabetes, your gallbladder issues that we talked about earlier, hemorrhoids. You definitely want to get fiber. And in order to get fiber, you need complex carbohydrates. And beneficial bacteria and yeast assist in your gut health, your respiratory health, your immune health, your endocrine health, and your brain functioning. And if you've had a situation in your life where you think your colony has been decimated, and that could be from anesthesia and surgery, that could be from chemotherapy or radiation, that could be from ongoing pharmaceuticals, that could be from a bout of the flu where you had diarrhea and everything just got washed out, right? If you think you've had that imbalance happen, then restore it. Restore it with fermented foods, restore it with a probiotic supplement. I am not one of those people that think you need to take probiotic supplements every day for the rest of your life, unless you have a health problem that keeps you from maintaining that colony. And that's pretty rare. Usually, your body can restore its own colony over time, but, if you've had a pretty radical slaughter of your bacteria and yeast, like chemotherapy, you're going to want to take some probiotics. And prebiotics are feeding the probiotics. And so some common prebiotics that are added to probiotic supplements are like chicory root that's high in inulin, that can feed those bacteria and really get them going so that they reproduce quickly in your system. And I will tell you, my preference when I advise people in clinical visits is to get at least, to get a supplement that's at least 10 different strains of bacteria. So not just a single one, not just acidophilus, not just lactobacillus, but several strains, because you need a whole diversity in there. And at least 10 billion CFU, which is the amount that you're getting per dose, right? So you really want to populate your gut. And so for me, that's the criteria for looking for a good probiotic supplement. You may want to also add some other criteria. If you are allergic to gluten, you can get gluten-free supplements. If you are vegan, you can look for a vegan capsule that they come in. I will let you know that as a public service, I offer at the bottom of my website, which you'll see at the end of the presentation, there's a button that says full script, and that is my dispensary that I use for my clinical clients, but anyone can use it, and they're deeply discount professional grade supplements, and you can actually scan the catalog that way. So if you're looking, you can type in probiotic, and then you can click, oh, I want it kosher, oh, I want it, non-GMO, I want it like this, I want it like that, and it will show you what meets that criteria. And like I said, I discount them because supplements are expensive. And I make that just available to the public as part of my community herbalist sort of pact with myself. So those are available to you because they can, no lie, supplements can get expensive, and I think that everyone should have access to them. So there's good and bad bacterial flora. And what we want to do is we want to maintain a good, healthy population of the good stuff that help us digest and help us break down and give us what we need, and avoid those bad ones. And one of those bad ones is, when people get SIBO. It's a overgrowth of a bad bacteria that can cause some serious problems like pain and cramping and whatnot. And getting rid of that one while maintaining a healthy one is hard. Usually you have to decimate everything and then restore.
I actually have a question regarding that.
Mhm.
So for me, I get a lot, like just from a small amount of sugar, like I've already stated I have Crohn's. Just from a small amount of sugar, my Crohn's, like that right abdomen section of my ileum, really starts getting, active, even like within a day.
Mhm.
Could that be a sign that I have too much sugar?
It might be that you have an overgrowth of yeast. Yeast is the organism that really loves sugar, and will immediately start overgrowthing when you feed it with sugar. And it can only, it can happen in your digestive tract where you can't see, but you can also see symptoms of yeast overgrowth if it's gone on too long in other places that are visible. Yeast on the tongue, vaginal yeast infections, yeast growing where skin meets skin, like between your legs and your torso. If it starts smelling kind of yeasty or getting kind of nasty on a hot day, like that's yeast overgrowth. And so you might want to go on a protocol to kill that yeast and start over.
What, like the FODMAP diet?
Well,
Like
there's
that.
Yeah, there's diets that will help you maintain, but what you probably need to do is go out of your way to kill a bunch of yeast. And so there are herbs and products, that you can use to kill the yeast overgrowth, depending on which way you want to go. There's pharmaceuticals and there's herbs to kill the yeast overgrowth, and then you'll need to build up your colony again because it'll kill other things too. I mean, when you are using some sort of antibacterial or antifungal, it doesn't discriminate, right? It's just going to kill everything.
Right.
So then you need to work on building it back up. And so if you think you have an overgrowth of yeast, which, sugar causing some serious health problems could be one of those. It could also just be an inflammation marker for you. Sugar definitely feeds inflammation. And so it might be that the FODMAP diet, 30 days on, 30 days off, might be helpful to you as well, because it could just be inflammation if you don't think it's yeast.
Well, I just went to the dermatologist and they told me I had a yeast skin situation. So,
well, that's good information. Now you know which direction to take it.
yeah, I'm on like a, topical treatment, but I said something to the dermatologist. I said, if this is happening like dermally, what do you think that might mean subdermal, like, internally? And he didn't really give me a good answer.
Well, they're not trained to give you a good answer. They're
Right.
specialists,
Right.
And I don't blame them for that. Like, that's how we
Right.
train our medical professionals, right? We give them a very narrow scope, as opposed to the way I was trained, which is a broad view. And so, I would say you probably need to go ahead and do some antifungals internally as well. And maybe you can contact me after class. I'll give you my email address, make sure you have it, and we can go from there. But it sounds like, something to manage. And when it requires sort of case management, then it's more of a long-term thing.
And then leaky gut, isn't that usually a symptom, possibly a symptom as well of yeast overgrowth?
It can be from yeast overgrowth. It can be from too much chemicals in the diet. It could be for any number of things. But yeah, if you think you have leaky gut as well as yeast overgrowth, it sounds like you probably want to make a wellness consultation visit, because it sounds like there's a series of things to manage that I definitely can't do justice here.
Yeah, I'm speaking for both my mom and I,
Okay.
because she has leaky gut, and I have the yeast. She wants to ask her
Yeah, can I
question about
ask you-
leaky gut.
I had a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic prescribe something called Leaky Gut Revive by
Okay.
Amy Myers. What's your
Okay.
thought on that?
I
Is
have
that a
not looked at that.
long-term thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have not looked at that. I'll have to look at what's in it and how they recommend taking it in order for me to have an opinion. But I can look that up. If you want to contact me after the presentation, we can definitely have a further conversation that's more specialized to you.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Lily,
What's the
we do
next
have a
slide?
question. We have a
Oh, okay.
question in the chat.
Sure.
What foods provide beneficial bacteria instead of buying probiotic supplements?
Sure. So fermented foods. So apple cider vinegar that still has the mother and isn't pasteurized. It's that cloudy stuff on the bottom. That's great. Fermented pickles, kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir. What's some others? Natto. There's every culture has its own fermentation, and you can actually ferment anything. You know, we have a bunch of ferments going downstairs. We, you know, picked our ramps and we fermented those. We pickle eggs. I have hot sauce that I make myself that's fermented. You know, and I bought these little silicone, they're called pickle pipes, and they fit on top of a mason jar. They have the regular kind and the regular mouth and then the wide mouth, and you can get them and just put your ferment in there and let it go to town for weeks. And then when you eat it, you're getting nutritious food that is more bioavailable to you. That's another benefit of fermenting food, right? It's more bioavailable nutrients because the bacteria and the yeast have started breaking it down for you. And you get those bacteria and yeast that come to live inside you. So here are some probiotic foods. Thank you, Darlene. So I mentioned apple cider vinegar, fermented dairy, which is yogurt, kefir, you can also ferment cheese, sauerkraut and kimchi. They're the same thing, but with different flavor profiles. It's fermented cabbage. Natto, which is fermented soybeans, kvass, which is fermented beets and barley and rye. Miso, I love miso, is, you know, a Japanese soybean paste. Kombucha, I make kombucha all the time. If you know somebody who makes their own kombucha, ask them for a SCOBY. A SCOBY is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, and it is a sort of slimy pancake that if you put it in with your tea, it will ferment your tea. It's basically the colony, and it'll grow bigger and bigger and bigger until you have to split it and either put it in different jars or give them to your friends. It's kind of like that applesauce Amish cake where you make one and you give them batter and then they make one and they give it to people. You can share SCOBYs infinitely, right? So we always have kombucha going, and traditional kombucha is where they take black or green tea and they ferment it. And then you can also do a second ferment with fruit to give it like, you know, a flavor profile. I actually don't always use caffeinated tea. Sometimes I use herbal tea of different types. And my favorite lately is hibiscus flowers, Jamaica, which is what they call it in Central and South America. It's those big red roselle flowers, and it makes very tangy, tart kind of tea, and it's this gorgeous garnet color. That's my favorite to make kombucha from lately. Yeah, so back to gut health. Your gut health affects every system in your body, and it impacts every system of your body. And often when I'm seeing clinical clients and they have chronic issues, we are going to deal with the digestive tract as one of the things that we work on, because almost everyone, it's been uncommon, but has happened, that everyone can make improvements either to their diet, or maybe they need probiotic supplementation to restore balance, or maybe they need a bitters therapy because all their organs aren't working correctly. And I will get to that. That's like, I think the next thing, bitters therapy. Or maybe they have depression. And so working on that gut-brain axis to help restore proper digestion will also work on the depression. Believe it or not, the distinction that we make in Western countries between mental health and physical health doesn't really exist. And when I studied Chinese medicine, like there were acupuncture protocols for depression, for schizophrenia, for, you know, bipolar disorder. And when us American students asked, like, well, do these treatments work? Like, does it cure schizophrenia? Our Chinese teachers were like, yeah, like, duh. And, you know, we've been taught that these things are a life sentence, that we live with them forever and that they need medication forever. And yet other cultures don't see it that way. They've had great success with their treatment protocols. Like, it's so interesting, right? And a lot of what we call mental illness is actually physiological in nature. So just to summarize this entire presentation in one quote by Michael Pollan: eat food, and we'll get to what I mean by food, not too much, mostly plants. Like that, if you just follow that maxim when you're making your everyday food choices, you're going to be better off than just like, oh, I got to hit the drive-through again. Because I'll tell you, that drive-through stuff, not so much food. I define food as things that still have, you know, they're as close to their natural state as possible. I'm not against cooking. Cooking is how we became complex human beings with lots of brain function, and cooking is good. It helps to release bionutrients, but as close to the natural state as possible. You know, minimal processing to make a food. Whereas, you know, if you look at all the processes a French fry goes through at McDonald's to get from the potato that it started out as, you know, how many ever years ago, to your little cardboard cup, there are so many processes, and by the time it reaches you, there are no nutrients in that potato, and there's a bunch of trans fats in that potato. So okay, so how are we doing on time, Darlene? I just want to make sure I'm on track.
We have about 6 more minutes, Lily.
Okay, I'm gonna talk fast. So bitters. We have evolved our digestive tract to eat bitters, and Americans eschew them. They like sweet, they like processed. But this little tongue diagram isn't actually accurate. Like, we know that that's not how it is. That's how I learned it in school, that there are different areas of the tongue that sense those things, but that's not really true. But bitters, those receptors that sense bitter, are not just on your tongue. They are throughout your entire digestive tract. They're also in your brain and your lungs. And when your body senses that you've ingested bitter, they stimulate proper functioning. We need bitter to work right. So rather than avoiding bitter foods and bitter beverages, you should actually seek them out on the regular. And if you don't know, because none of us have been trained in eating bitter food the way other cultures have, or drinking bitter cocktails in the afternoon the way other cultures have, if you're not sure where to start, in the interim, you can take a supplement called Digestive Bitters. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, we'll go to the next one. All right, so here's just a diagram of where bitter taste receptors are found in the digestive tract. You can see, so when they get stimulated in the liver, bile production, boom. In the pancreas, not only insulin, but digestive enzymes, boom, right? In the stomach, the proper time to release acid and enzymes. In the small intestine, it helps get those folds ready for nutrient absorption. Next slide. So here's just the next 2 slides, I think, are just clips of scientific studies talking about bitter taste receptors and how they improve health when they are stimulated. Just backing up what I said. Basically, when you ingest bitter, whether it's a food or a beverage, your body is going to function better. So it's going to help relieve heartburn. It's going to regulate your appetite. Bitter is kind of like the opposite of sweet. And the more bitter you ingest, the less you're going to crave sweet. So those of you who have yeast overgrowth, bitters is your friend. Bitters help curb sugar cravings, because I'll tell you, those yeast will make you a little meat puppet and make you want to go eat candy. I'm telling you, they do that. They're mean. It helps relieve gas and bloating and nausea. It can support proper blood flow, particularly to the gut, but other places too, healthy liver functioning. We know that it has an effect on the brain and the lungs. We're not sure why yet, but we know that those bitter receptors are there. So isn't that fascinating? What's next? Yeah, so here are, a bunch of things about why bitters can have positive impact on all these things, including the vagus nerve. We can move forward. All right, so here are my final recommendations. Eat whole food, and I don't mean the supermarket, like not the Amazon thing. I'm talking about eating food closest to its natural state that you cooked yourself and you know what went into it. Eat less at restaurants, eat less at drive-throughs and fast food restaurants, eat less processed food where all you have to do is one step because they've done all the pre-stuff for you. Make your own food whenever possible. And sometimes that means changing your weekly routine so that on one day a week when you're not working like crazy, you can prep a bunch of stuff. And that, that's legit. Using a probiotic when you're imbalanced, not all the time, but probiotics are super helpful at restoring that balance quickly. But eating fermented foods regularly to maintain that colony, that's important. So all those fermented foods that we talked about, taking a bitter tonic, the more you take it, the more regularized and normalized your digestive tract will be, and you will also see other benefits. The reason that I say take the bitter tonic all the time is because it's replacing foods that you're probably not eating. And so it helps with the variety of foods that you're eating. Now, if you go out of your way to learn different bitter foods that you like and you're eating those every week, you don't necessarily need to take a supplement, but that's going to take a learning curve. So bitter tonic, get regular sleep, exercise to maintain your metabolism, get outside every day. Outside where you see green things, you breathe fresh air, you get sunshine, you hear birds singing. All of those things lead to positive mental health, which in turn leads to positive digestive health. They're connected, right? Care for your emotional health because it will impact if you're having a lot of stress and a lot of trauma in your life. Without eliminating those things, you're going to have emotional health issues and eventually digestive health issues, because again, it's a cycle. It's not a one-way street. It goes both ways. And my website and Haven Herbs website are on there. So I have a clinical practice and I do classes, and that's lilykunning.com. I am the formulator for Haven Herbs, and they have a digestive bitters formula with both alcohol or vinegar. You can get either one. That is who I formulate for, and they're the ones who put on the Natural Living series. And again, I've got, I think, 4 handouts coming. One on PPIs, one on health at every size. What are the other 2 that I sent you?
There was one for the pyramid. There was
the Mediterranean food pyramid.
Mhm.
And then let me see here.
And then these handouts as well, your presentation.
Yes. I think that's right. So yeah. Oh, I made the thing tiny. How did I do that? Oh no. There we go. It's like this big. Okay.
Well, Lily, we are at the top of the hour, and we understand if people have to jump off because of other time commitments, but we did have one last question in the chat.
Mhm.
What foods are good for fatty liver, non-alcoholic?
Sure. So what you want are herbs that and foods that are astringent, and you want things that help break down lipids. So things that are, garlic is really great. You can ferment garlic and get like a double whammy. It's more digestible, and it's good for your liver, and it's going to help you break down those fats, things like that. There are quite a bit, if you look at foods that are known to help with cholesterol, it will also help with fatty liver.
Okay, and then everybody says, thank you so very much. This was wonderful and very helpful. So
I encourage people to reach out if they have further questions. If you email me at holler, HOLLER at lilykunning.com, you can get a hold of me, or you can just go to my website and use the contact form. You'll have that in your handouts. But I wish you all a very good day.
Well, thank you so much, Lily. We greatly appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise. Lily will be back with us at the end of the 4th Tuesday in July. So July 26th at 9 a.m. She's going to be presenting Natural Medicine Cabinet Alternatives to Common Drugs and Body Care. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And Lily, as always, thank you so much for this fabulous presentation.